Ngasi lawjagdaba class sina block 1 a process to study of Indian politics. About Indian government politics BPSC 132B unit 1 liberal approach habaduni. Masida aina nainazani ba wafam singde mathang setna hamada liberal approach and introduction. Ani subada liberal approach versus liberalism. Home Subudha, the core elements of liberal approach. Mari Subudha, liberal approach to study Indian politics. Mara Subudha, changing scope of liberal approach. Mathang the convergence of approaches. Aduga, Loisalapada summary. Aduna, Hamada introduction da in a thumbing si liberal approach, si Karino, I will say, Kangabu, Anabakanda, politics, I will say. Hamada Kama Masautai, Indian politics, Masakana Honor Panina, politics the Yaurisi Kainakanda. It involves relationships among people with themselves, state and non-state organizations or groups. Haidana politics da Masagi Miamsi Marakta Linava, Miamsi Marakta, Miam Masenda, Aduga, Lenga, state Lenga to the Amasung. State nataba atopa laiba organization sing group sing mayam sigi marakta maga nainaba mari sing adu nainaba du politics ni haidana sumaina koi simply yengba yai mathang da koina khangdu shi haiba koi relationships mayam sigi marakta saigi competition laigani idana ba conflict laigani koi muna ba thokpa du ga ngasai amaga tengbang na ba masasu laiba organization sing miam aduga loina na ngasai state na lengang na maduda kamaina koi response to boge haibana symbol ba masideda adana there is competition, conflict and cooperation among people or their organizations and response of the state and institutions to different sections of society and their concerns. Adana ngasai competition, conflict, cooperation si Sagi labor meet Miam Singugi Marakta organization da the state na pirapa response aduga response of the institutions state to body to manung the labor Sagi Tuan institutions na society to gi magi Tuan Basarus da different sections da aduga Mikoya labor concerns to the combined response or pogi I would do I have to involved in politics here. Politics is viewed in terms of political structures and processes or political system. Aduna liberal approach the koina politics kamaina yeng bugi haiba kanda political system amada laiba magi political structures kogi lenga ki oiba lenga longi sana pathaf adugi manung de laiba ngasai ki kogi political structures magi song saktam sing aduga maduda thoiba structures in the manung the toy operational or market processes. I will tone Toda sing a do Sagi command top do Sai politics na Nainavani. Vashalapada its primary concern is to study consensus or conflict management within a political system. Aduna liberal approach Sagi Apana Yangisi political system Zigi Manunda Sagi Amato Yanaba Wareba Azarebo consensus ama Kamaina or a Pagi Habdu Nainaba study tower. Natragana Sagi Yanadaba Sagi society group sing the organization sings the state Amadi Magi institution the labor Miam sing American labor relationships Mamida Tolopa Masagi conflict the Muna was in Masi Kamaina Sangdaina Vagi Sin Langba Madugi management of Tobugi having a single adu Maina Vaduna liberal approach my main primary concern oi I was in was a kind of move Yingadori second slide liberal approach I was liberalism I was we confuse at Nava Anizi Kenavuduni liberal approach I was in a Sagi Indian politics Naina Bakanda Boina Maruina perspective Mieng Wakan Mieng and Isangi Amadana Marxian Habama Aduga Anisubada non Marxian perspective Habama. Then a liberal approach I was see Nasagi non Marxian Weba Wagi Mieng idealistic Indian politics in Nainava Aduma season of Wakan Mieng Amani Masi karino harakanda liberal approach amusu ngasai structural functional or systemic approach haisigi magi khara tungan ba koi makhal lama amasu my variant amoy structural functional haibasi ngasai koi David Aston hoi muina kena toba behavioral movement in political science kita koi lake ba dui anova wakhlon na sagala peno ni structural functional approach ko adugi saruga maswai liberal approach. Whereas liberalism is based on a commitment to individual freedom, tolerance, and consent. Liberalism haiba ideologies na karino harakanda ngasai madi politics nainabaki approach amoina lebenate madi ngasai gi koigi wakhalon gi sana kangon pathaba mane habare masida ngasai ke doba mi khudima magi individual freedom magi lanai ningkhata masi koigi enjoy toba aduga khenaba leiba myamsi amaga tolerance tamba habidi koigi munaba thokta mo koigi kunna yane anaba saminaba aduga loinana koigi consent ayaba maina pinaraga singolapa dumba koigi political gi ideology amani liberalism si. Liberalism came into existence as an outcome of protest against a hierarchical and privileged authority and monarchy in England and Europe. Liberalism as kamaina horakibno hairagati sida sarapamana haibasi ngasai matam amada koigi leramba feudal system autocracy gi kari gi smaina leba hierarchy naiba koigi anem awang tha khaiba dugumba koigi society gi sana kangon kunai leramba anem awang gi kena wadu gi salon adagi privileged authority ngasai aristocracy na paidagi sendau paiba lari heba moina masin tongbo oiraga taijina ngasai nomi simi waina pagi minai patha badu magi keno dasu yamna kayani kena wa tha amada hingba ko privileged authorities ingana pagi awang ma thak ta lairaga na mukaina hingbadu ba khunai gi system aduga pagi monarchy ningthopan bagi sana patha sing sai England amasung Europe ke tele basinda sai gi maduda pagi protest toropa pagi madugi mayo ta horokiba yo haidare adudagi tholakiba kainoni haidare liberalism gi ideologies. Next slide ta apaina yengoisi liberal approach ta my core elements si kari boidu no haibsi masida haisi core elements si ahum si kai no haikanda institutions processes and values haiba ahum sini institutions na aham bada kai no haina yemba kanda the political system before bringing back state in the 1980s, within brackets, consists of certain institutions or structures such as political parties, interest groups, or civil society organizations. And a political system is the institutions structures, institutions structures, political parties, multi-party democratic system amada when a democracy sepalaiva amada when uji political parties ani na jaga ani de hembasini adana multiple political parties lairagani adagi tonga interest groups mayama kogi lairani aduga civil society organizations mayam lairani adana haibasi kogi institutions into political system jigi manunga laibasing duni jagi maina haibasi system. Next, interaction with social structures such as caste, language, religion, region, tribe, etc. So, high political systems, political systems, institutions or structures, masiga, amu social structures, kunai dogi, langak togi, magi institutions, aduga society kunaidu laiba ngasai atopa koi structure sing haibadi caste system gi tonga lon ngang bagi tonga lining set bagi anagi tonga mafam region aduga tribe koi suguma mayam siga ngasai political institutions and structures sing ga interact bagi wasak masu masidi yawi. Due to their interaction, certain processes occur where different components of an organization conflict and cooperate and reach a consensus. aduna sida lai poti wagi liberal approach ki keno sida koina phangi ba poti kai no akanda saigi political institutions or structures siga saigi social structures siga interact or pakan sida saigi tongan ba magi masar singsi organization different components of an organization saigi conflict thorpa natragana muna ba thorpa natragana tengbang na ba cooperate tawna adugumba thorpa aduga last amu pidoba ama toina gyana ba koi whatever ma hai tare koi consensus ama mu restore adana smai tawna yana da ba muna ba aduga yana raga chamina ba masina last ta kai warapa koi ama toina yana ba koi consensus ama maina build torogi sigi pose political sagi institutions singa social social structures singa interact tawdagi sumaina phangi next the processes in the kaino yaw say haiba kanda different institutions and organizations perform tasks such as political mobilization, interest articulation and interest aggregation haiba Mathanga, with the progress of democracy, the processes are also referred to as democratization, deepening, and consolidation of democracy. Adana amagi bullet point high si tonga institutions natragana organizations sina magi makan gi mathau de pangtho air different tasks perform tawi high ba tonga mathau sing si kai no high ba kanda hamba the political mobilization high si koina Manipuri the higher gadi ngasai miyam si koi hodok miyam si koi saruk yana ba political participation porona ba ngasai miyam si hodok bagi porama high ba hodok bagi posi civil society organizations na YBI na traga government institutions wanda ba miyam sina YBI hamba the political mobilization na malayani ala miyam si hodok matungda mo miyam si wakhan puning no phoropa saigi maikoigi aningba pama mayam sim pedawa interest articulation haidana maikoigi aningba pama sim the demands wena awai inputs wena political systems da saigi ikhalane adana political systems gi magi institutions sing sida saigi haiba mobilize people lagi pangapang saigi magi interest sing magi demands sing se magi input wena articulate tawkana thamani aduga high ba myam se mu political pressure so interest groups kumba myam sina ju ngai pukhalak ni si pukhalak da aduga last kai dore interest aggregation haida number 12 structural functional sai approach to the do manung da operator ni ngai political mobilization tawba myam sina mai ko yani apam si political systems da sini haidana we submit toropa we pukhalakpa demand se aduga amuk haiba se amuk ngai political parties na tai we government ki concern authorities in na ngai amuk moi se ke doba we policy programming manung da we sini sumaina tawbaduni miyamna pamai je na si tawna ba haibagi was the interest ma amje mu aggregate tawrakanda the minor mu tham processing is the yawasina ko aduna haiba si democracy ji mu saigi democracy gi miyamna lenga sabaki chana kanun se lenga pathapsi chana ba hora ba matung study mu kai dawre akanda haiba saigi political mobilization ki interest articulation ki interest aggregation ki masigi thabak thawang ma amsi saigi democratization haiba and wasida thawang still loina bagi manung sale aduga loina na afata da hena bagi democratization ki process deepening toropa mara se selakpa aduga hena yani consolidate to ba bagi hena mawong marin sumba mawong mada yam lenga se bagi kan wase mara tara haidare masigi democratization ki process sigi smai to na so bagi thami aduga last ki bullet point is na the liberal approach views politicization of people as democratization through electoral mobilization and political participation na already high ba liberal approach da politicization of people say saigi miyam si politicized the why si kai no ha kan miyam si saigi democratic political bagi processes da saigi saru yan bagi bagi thong do adu mo na chathara ba karamba mo na chathaba saigi politicization of people zeng saigi electoral mobilization saigi both ki matam na miyam si Mantongamba bagi political parties the mo support groups interest groups miyam si da bagi Mantongamba issues ke am raise to na papada si tawba tawda ba na saigi miyam si sida bo thada ji adu party da thada ji adu candidate thajo di haida na magi election manifesto gi ama magi no di makhada miyam si bagi mobilize to was masigi sarusda miyam je political participation is minor democratic system amada bagi sana la miyam sing saigi politics the yaw la pai da se buning saigi politicization of people na saigi democratization process the yaw is third core element of the liberal approach is the yaw is kai no ha kan values sing si kari we have kan bagi liberty the human rights and equality side that asugum me amse bagi value system amani haida bagi liberal approach na sai marui ba magi core elements home just minor pukula and the institutions processes of the values high home just minor and some the way ada masaga mani haida na thami. It is the duty of the state to provide protection to the vulnerable sections, ethnic groups, scheduled tribes, and minorities. A liberal approach advocates individual rights and freedom, but it also advocates protection of communities, especially their language, culture, and script. Adana kaidamakta value si maru oribano as a core element of liberal approach haragading asagi. Kuna amada lebamada asagi tunga ba bagi groups ma'am like high groups in saying asagi say ethnic minorities will be linguistic minorities will be scheduled tribes will be high ba vulnerable sections have the kara akan ba kanglot na pati tawai na to biba ngamba ba kara matu sona leiba ba vulnerable sections ki miwesing ethnic minorities and scheduled tribes they are the linguistic cultural minorities may are seeing as I must nation but we protection be by the same language my mato manel. Adana liberal approach na mana highly sika no higanda liberal approach na zai individual gi rights and freedom katanatana ni magi rights aduga magi freedom do katanata mana mo high si protection of communities especially their language culture and script adi tonga communities India available the communities automatically young religious sense the wire linguistic sense the wire cultural sense the wire magi one to communities me amji magi tonga loan ngamba tonga culture manat laiba duga magi mayek laiba sugumba community me amji protect to se sidu the way approach na sai protect to them ni habisi sumaina thamel magi akan yenda individual gi khatana tabada community sing is protection je state na pi gadona aduna democratic rights cannot be saved without safeguarding these values in a nation like India aduna India gumba bagi amna diverse way ba bagi khuna yamada sai gi high ba values me amse language culture script ki magi kenaba like ethnic groups ki scheduled tribes ki labor me amse ki can also state na protection be ragadi sangi democratic rights individuals singi like citizens na enjoy to the magi democratic rights sisu masisu na ko no mai haida mana sai liberal approach na mai sena thasa just mana thami object lies na liberal approach to study Indian politics si nainabada liberal approach na hayo si karino hayo si magis maroiba sawapa or choosing duni amada liberal approach si karino hayo si mamano so is a variant of systemic or structural functional approach systemic or structural functional approach hayo si ki sidagi kitang ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯤ ꯃꯥꯟꯅꯔꯞ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯆ ꯃꯈꯜ ꯑꯃꯅꯤ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝ ꯑꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯆꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯈꯪꯅꯩ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ is also known as modernization or development framework hainasu system approach khangai masi David Stone aduga James S Coleman na say 1950s and 60s da behavioral movement dugi saruk ama oina nakoina akoigi sagalakhiba adugumba approach amani haidare aduna nakoina David Stone amasung James Coleman oina maruina nainari si kai no haiganda magi modernization or development framework sigi manung sida nainari si kai no haiganda development of modern political institutions in developing societies aidi nauna sakalaliba lebaksing da koigi haiba developing countries in developing societies sing sida da saigi matau karamna modern political institutions sing se koigi sahora pagi haibagi semgalapagi haibagi nainabuduni assignment maroina moina tawibje 1950s and 60s the political system comprises of political institutions, structures, and processes, and they keep interacting, conflicting, and adjusting with each other. But the political system maintains itself. Adana main oina masida koina yengadok si kaino haikanda political system amada yawi si kai kaino haibakanda political institutions in the magi structures, the processes. aduna haiba mayam si mu kai do we haiba kanda koi si amu interact over id tona thengna ba adagi mukna ba aduga adjustment over amaga yana ba koi leminna ba gi kon loina ba gi adu ma gi mo ma to mayam sing sai political systems the loina thoe and just interaction ka na ta ba conflict so thoe na conflict se thola kanda interaction si paramoina zagi tona thengna base da masai gi mungna base thola kanda mungna base resolve to na bona kan sai adjustment gi process is live adana hiding your voting sai political system si sai gi masana labor challenges myam je magi processes my structures in operator kanda the processes ngai to pa conflict kind of sida adjustment kanda right consensus build to Mazedam sustain to self-sustaining or Maze break up to they have political systems. Adana Indian politics in Nainavada, Wagi liberal approach, Amina Kanano, season I will have a weekend, Masi Yamna, Wagi Sintani Iva, Wagi work habitat, Masi Rasni Kotari, Iva. US na yamna rino noiba intellectual mani mahaki politics in India I will like sida mana sai political system ase sai mama na hari butmaina sai conflicting economy muna ba mamsi lairaga su sai consensus building from the lagba adjustment of sigi process mana sustain to na yamna resilient way aidana political system the thami aduga Mahana politics in India was the Maruin and Nainari the era of Congress dominance during 1950s and 60s as Congress system. Mahana 1950s and also 1960s the Congress party na Ninkata Maba Indiagi Bengasi Yamna Chana Masagi yani mana Padagi Mapangan Kanba political party wherever the Mana Lenga Aga Lafasi Masibu Mana Congress na dominant over adugumba era Congress system haidana mana magi raisida saitai adu haiba Rajni Kothari gi works da thamiba maroiba enomyasi magi assessment enosi CB Bambari haidana mahana mu masagi masi critic towe masida magi yaningdaba enokra wafam gara fogdoi aloina mahana hairibasi Rajni Kothari gi magi framework si it prohibits raising basic questions in Indian politics, such as the class character of the state, location and distribution of political power, and the role of imperialism. Rajni Kothari framework is the basic one questions in Indian politics. State magi class characteristic state I was seeing as Marxian point of view the dominant oiba koigi sen paiba kambusina koigi mai koigi interests sub tona ba naina state se semakibani haba pole yadana asagi class character of the state masida kogi kaino se rajni pathari framework da masi question to yabagi mai kaino se frameworks the yaw da adagi location mafamgi aduga distribution of political power se kanana kadaida paibano kanai makutani hena power se pairaga seasonai havna singmagi kaino na se masi ju hangba yabagi space laida aduga loina na role of imperialism su masi naina na bagi kaino se rajni pathari framework the yaw de da thingba ayata yaw thingba ayata lay haidana sibi bambri na mana samaina critique tawi masigi jo mathakta ngasai gi haiba pathari gi framework sida economic aspects sisu naina bagi kaino se yaw de udam moina bagi trade unions big industrial houses adagi bagi lobbies of rich farmers and landless peasants adi lam masai lam najada ba low uraga hingba kangluk sing adagi sian yamna paiba bagi so masagi lam laiba dumba farmers singi maikoi lobby aduga so ba industrial houses tata gumba birla gumba maikoi gumba mayam adagi bagi simi singi magi ba luf or trade union sing maikoi mayam sina low river roles masi mayam je magi economic aspects sing masi phajana sagi naina bagi gen wasida yaw de rasni pathari masina magi aswan mani haidana bambiri na maina thami maduna ngasagi kai werki haiba kanda jagi it blames the limitation of the systemic approach aduna ngasagi systemic approach the liberal approach ki kan wase masigi awat pa son ba haidare my limitations in the sini haidana sugum majida awat pa se lai aduna masi mapum pha le habdo maina thami aduga loina na does not look at class conflict as a process of social change aduna liberal approach na ngasai class conflict hadi manada ba social class ani marakta thopa ngasai muna basi masi jina maram wara kanda koi social change naida home product na bagi kan ose magi thawong se masi asna naina de habagi kan madu scope to be de hadana maina my limitation thami madu moja kaidawi whether it focuses on how a system maintains itself or a consensus within its conflicting units adana aduguma me amdu naina we muta magi main focus se kai da thamya kan da sai political systems ina sai gi magi manunda laiba institutions sing aduga magi process ko aduga sai gi mamang hai ba maina social structures ke kan nam ga koi gi interact to ma bizda sai thola ba conflict sing je kamaina koi gi manage to ga conflict management to ga kan da sai consensus build to ga sustain to ga le gi have se masido na focus to wa sai gi na liberal approach ki no se framework na adugu ngasai kotarina mu mana mu agi to madu kai na kan da he is using the pluralistic analysis to study state politics in India na mana ai na ngasai gi magi lai sida politics in India astamaroina mana to is pluralistic analysis adi khenaba bagi kayama diverse groups kayama bagi cultural groups kayama linguistic groups kayama bagi punna coexist over ba pluralism gi saglo na malaiba bagi ko then kuna iji masi masakang na ba haiba bagi research ki tools ma season na bani haida mana thami by the end of 1970s transformation of the society changed the character and nature of state then reforms during revolutions and welfare policies driven change Nagagi 1950s 60s the Congress system jina magi dominant weraga le ramadai 1970s lo di societies da home ke amala koi transformation ke am so maduna kai lore ngasagi state ki lenga ki magi character am sun nature magi mo ma to da su mai masat da su home ke am pore hai ba home me am si state ki nature and character magi masat magi mo ma to da home ke am pore si maroi na kai na drive to no hai kai ma mi thura ke na ga di land reforms ki movement adagi koi gi hena manama sing sa na thar ma sinja puthong na gi koi gi green revolutions adagi di welfare policies ke ama sumaina thula puzna haiba sciences minor 1970s loislapodagidi minor state ki national character da hom kyama pore the region of state ana ngasai gi koina liberal approach la isi marxian approach ga ma khenari si liberal approach ta ngasai mana political system haiba sida dum sanaraga leibani asida political system haiba ziga ngasai gi state haiba ziga ga no da kitang khenaba lai marxian approach na ngasai state haiba si masida focus tawi political system na tawde adubu koigi atema matam 1980s ki swai da gi di horian makha tar bu jaw kani convergence ma la kani ngasai gi adu da ni ngasai gi region of the states ngasai gi state haidana marxian oi ba kai no moina lairam ba koigi term ji ngasai gi koigi liberal approach zu ngasai gi political system ne state ne ani ji ngasai gi koigi amaga je koigi mohut sindo sin na mo na koi season ra koigi post da ngasai gi mami se la professor zoya hasan na mana ngasai gi kari haina thamge haiba kanna koigi state se ngasai gi autonomous institution amani hadi marom dom ningtamna koigi leiba adugumba institution amani hadana mana ngasai gi sumaina observation ama thami haiba state se autonomous institution wena leiba magi class character the minor wena puthokta basi masibu kari kauge haiba kanda statist approach hadana sumaina kawi masina kaidoi it is giving insufficient importance to the role of diverse groups in Indian society adana statist approach ki magi limitations se kari ni hai kanda ngasai gi Indian society is automatic diverse way bani diversity haiba ki posi Indian society de am sound amami tai adana labor diverse groups sing gi moi tunga tunga ba magi role me am sideda ka hena koi importance se pd haiba sigi posi status approach ne ba also like is not sensing scope of liberal approach na liberal approach ngasai gi Indian states study to buganda then politics study to buganda ngasai gi liberal approach gi magi scope di magi pankhai ha tare ba magi pankhai je ko gi honglak ba magi pankhai ha tare solon saktam sida hom bala pasing duni then the sensing scope of liberal approach includes studying the activities which aim to achieve social change or are concerned with basic democratic values, people's mobilization through civil society organizations, multiculturalism, social capital, or in electoral politics. Adana liberal approach ki magi only ba pankhai se yaw is kai kai no ha kanda sai gi social change kunai da home pora na ba natragana ngasai gi democratic values ko basic democratic values adagi nyambu koigi mobilize to bugi civil societies na mobilize to bugi housing adagi koigi Indian society da wa dong ba leiba diverse cultural groups myam jing ngasai gi kai hani koigi equally respect to na kan da koigi hingbagi amana mabu respect to ba ngasai gi equal na treat to gi adumba sai multiculturalism gi koigi sana kangon aduga social capital aduga electoral politics ta koigi lebang apagi koigi mihut khan bagi thawang mai batare ba lenga lon ni mai le ba suguma myam sida lai ba koigi yaw ba activities myam masibu masida masi myam je loina ma liberal approach ki ma gi framework sida sai sum mai pan kai ni da sanjalak pai da na pathol solve to padun masida maina nainari si civil society ki kai no si mafam ji liberal approach ki kai no da sensing scope da ma je manung sale na civil society da lai ji the core element of the liberal approach is individual freedom yana ma the liberal approach ko na yamna maroi ba yumpham moina kai la yeng ji mi amagi magi maning makha tamba state da laiba mi amagi mai individual freedom si masina khwaidagi maruiba mai bagi core element but it also includes community ethnic groups marginalized sections and protection of their rights adubu individual freedom du khatana ta masagi haiba kaino sida liberal approach na cover to iseba individual gi magi democratic rights ama masu lairedi mathakta magi rights and liberties ki wafam gatana tabana society to the labor, to community, the Kenna Waki Kano Fruitsing, the marginalized sections, the Namhat to get Piraba, the missing Amjadaba, Pangan Sonba, the Kunai, the Saruba, New Kamusing, Aruga, Maikogi, Huxing, Wagi Raisi, Wagi not seen Wagi, one answer, Massing as I civil society, Manus the liar. And a fundamental rights safeguard the basic rights and provide protection to the citizen and community. There are many cases where the state has failed to protect. This approach views the role of civil society organizations in relation to democratic rights of individuals. Other than as I give citizens as well as community, as I give more the piriba fundamental rights in basic rights in say, as I give safeguard over, not be sent Masi Yao the way are there, as I develop or seek and a city process, civil society, Manung Sanba. The final line. Tabu high protection P. I'm saying, as I magi individual give wrong, community level give wrong, as I fundamental rights, I'm saying. Kayuma Tanda, where the station Hazana protection PB Bangam Napi and the case Kamasu to a scenario. Aduna liberal approach na kari hani yengi liberal approach ni yengi madudi democratic rights of individuals miyam new singgi the lebas the leba new singgi mana phamum topa democratic rights miyam jebo masigi kaino sida civil society na kamaina high rising se singer abakanda protection station na pi rabakanda natraga station na high rising sida our nice Athara Wakanda, the Kamaina Madu Naka, the Gavaki, Nalopi, and Madu civil society in my role to them. Civil society versus civil society organizations. Civil society has a most civil society organization, has a Kenavale, Amana organization, Amana Sagi Magi, civil society has a Magi family, Sagi smallest unit, Sagi. Family has a state or labor magi lenga siga family maga ani marakta lenga space masi civil society going asmaya na mira sandona magi writing sila zamana thami civil society has a kaino haga it is a space lying between the family and the state adana city space da me ba masa civil society organizations in there florist or other civil society organizations in the thola ganda mayon songa na koina mal operate over. The liberal approach helped explain the role of these organizations in democratization of the society or protection of the rights of the individuals and groups in the society. Liberal approach na explain to civil society organizations society to the democratization process, society to the democratic principles and ethos individual freedom, rights, liberties, and masakana empowered democratization of societies. Masi Porana Honabada, I organizations in the so Rollaman Lowy, and then a Masigi democratization process the society to the labor individuals as well as Magi groups in Lupuna, Magi rights and protection to often with that civil societies in a sober role we have. Such rights includes freedom of expression, freedom to form associations, freedom to dissent, freedom to generate and disseminate public opinion. Adana civil society na protect the unabo honoriba rising simarung the maru na pagi aning bapamba ati to simulate na pungdopuli freedom of expression the right adagi ano no look kaya same magi association same magi freedom adagi yaning da ba pungdopuli freedom to dissent adagi pangamba issues in the maru ba public issues of public importance nyam ba Yamaru is using the Madu public opinions form the wider Madu generator Madu Miam the Kangan Nava, Peggy Saitong Nava, Honorable Magic and civil society is overall low. And the civil society organizations help us to explain the relationship between state and society. state lenga siga sagi kunai siga ani gi marak laina de marizi kai no ai basi masak tang na ba khona bazida simisrai singa sauraba koi thodang ma yai hozik multiculturalism gi matang da mukhra naina si liberal approach recognizes the rise of not only the individuals but also groups mamang na su thamre liberal approach the individuals khatagi rights and liberty na te groups sing isu groups singi collective rights and interests ki matang na su liberal approach na pai masak khangya dare in a diverse society recognition of rights of diverse groups right to representation and distributive justice is indicative of multiculturalism aduna tunga khenaba gyana punzilaga semba khunai amada asai haiba khenaba groups myam jigi magi haksing right to representation adi maikoi mihut khanjaraga maikoi gi interest aba tonaba honaba adagi asai society da asai kayani distribution of kayani koi justice se wealth opportunities adagi magi power laibu myam je diverse groups da manana sanmirai naidana or you mina yaudana asai manana just so mong da koi share to se just sharing of power wealth opportunity and resources side are asai distributive justice ki suma myam se lairagadi haiba diverse society da multiculturalism se lai haidana yana haiba distributive justice aduga right to representation se masi violate toragadi asai diverse groups singki magi interest magi rights se when respect toragadi haiba diverse society da multiculturalism se koi lai diana lawana ana bikhu parekna 2006 da mana magi writing amada mana sumaina thami madudi no multicultural society can or should ignore the demands of diversity adana multicultural society amada masai tonga diverse groups singgi makoi gi demand singse ko masi ignore to way ade adumba ignore to society do da society do masai multicultural or the have civic cooperative mani thami multiculturalism goes beyond liberal individualism and it assumes that human beings are culturally embedded aduna multiculturalism na high sikai no aganda multiculturalism na sai uisi individual liberal individualism aduna sai democratic society mada laiba individuals in enjoy toriba magi democratic rights aduna magi liberty freedom myamse masi khatana te multiculturalism na constantly mana assume tawi madudi new basing sina khunai amada laiba kanda new baduna maze individual ama khatawaina masakta ngamda maze zai groups waina collective weba form da zai masakta ayo ana high groups myamse kedoba moise culturally embedded way sai ethnic group weba linguistic group weba cultural groups or any other form amada masagi mai collective way bukan amada masakta ayo na haiba human beings in say sai ke doi mai ko se culturally embedded way haiba ko pokai ba individual way na lai na te mai ko da masagi tongamba manada magi lona mangamba na daga lining amba satba gumba scheduled tribe ki hire so mai tongamba kaino amada ko culturally embedded way ga lai haiba human beings organize their lives and social relations in terms of a culturally derived system of meaning and significance. Aduna mamang haiba maina muibuna makoi hingbasi kunai punsida makoina hingbasi moigi social moigi punsi amsung masai kunai da moina semiba mari myamsi amaga maga leneba mari myamsi masigi wan tho musung masigi kanaba mayamasi masai culturally derived tawne magi manatu tagi sahorpa wasagamo koyeba magi punsi amsung magi kunaida mana semiba masagi social relations maps these cultural communities generally demand various kinds of rights for collective or group rights to maintain their collective identity aduna haiba human beings is na organized toroga magi shangaliba magi cultural communities maps na amukaidore magi sustain tawnaba sagi haiba magi cultural communities in sigi magi rights me aw moina collective rights or groups right haidana mo sai collective identity do apun bagi oiba saktam do collective identity do mangdana ba madu bu kallaga laina na wagi da makta me demand ta wa na Gurpreet Mahajan gi mana 2002 de iba magi writing da man haisi Mahajan states that multiculturalism is concerned with the issue of equality. The mana issue of equality is yaudana multiculturalism. Equality everything aside, multicultural groups diverse cultural groups coexist with them as equals. Samana human respect over equality is multiculturalism. It is concerned with the question if different communities are living peacefully together as equals in the public arena. Public arena da miyam gi oiba lepa ki oiba koi gi phampak da kayumba leiba tonga ba communities mayam ase koi gi nusi janana koi gi tangdu leitana punna amagana amadagi athoi hen leitabida koi chamana apikpasu asobuju koi gi punna himinna bra habagi wafam ase masisi yamaruiba wafam ni multiculturalism gi matangda haidana Mahajan gi argument Mana Musuhai, she states that multiculturalism is different from pluralism or diversity. Sumnagi Kenaba Mayama, Masinyamba, Kangu Mayama, Kenaba Mayama, Tasalaga Himba Haduga, Adumba Kunai Pusia Viduga, multiculturalism, Havuga, Kenaya and a man argumentami. Manani see pluralism or diversity denotes just coexistence of different groups in the society, but not whether they are related to democratic pursuits or not. Multiculturalism is necessarily associated with democracy. Gurpreet Mahajan ki mage strong argument si multiculturalism haibasi just pluralism or diversity do not. Diversity or pluralism na haidi ngama different groups ngama coexist awa haibana. Na amada. Aduna tayo ngasai tonga koi groups ngam si society amada Saigi yana democratic way bumongda magi collective identity si maghandana ngaga thamibra thamdabra kamaina amaga relation laibra hanna singbagi keno adugi equality gi principle of equality do madu embedded weragadi madu multiculturalism werani or just diverse groups mayama coexist over the madu pluralism or diversity werani have the channel adana democracy is niyamna lenga saba kunai punsi or lenga lona magi sana pathap se semnaba honabada multiculturalism haibase yaudagama yadavani habadumai it either guarantees or attempts to provide cultural rights of religious and linguistic minority communities to preserve their cultural language and script and other rights adana ngasai leba amada kunai amada leiba tonga ba masagi culture manat loan amasung mayeng na singba aduga to moigi rights mayam je ko masibu preserve tonaba honazariba agi religious lining gi tonga kangluk sing na tangana loan manada basingi ba kangluk sing ko minority communities nam je ko mai koida guarantee tawi it either multiculturalism na guarantee tourism multiculturalism na analyzing as cultural rights of the religious and linguistic minorities na do ai culture loan amudong scheme na simudo mang da takna thamnabagi yani protection do multiculturalism da lai or pina banaba amade mahanda na banaba social capital da la kanda social capital je kaino kanda social capital denotes existence of networking among people in a group or community who share common values and trust each other social capital je kaino ga di ngasai gi community ama jaga group ama sida yawiba miyam jina amaga sakhang makhang naraga makoi di khunai gi insi da ngasai gi sakhang makhang na bagi mari amana seba mari amana pullaga hingba dare with shared common values and trusting each other amana mau thajana ba aduga manaba values kara share to organa the mana hinguduguni adugi networking duguni social capital highest. Since the 1990s, this concept has been used to explain nature of relations among communities. It was taken from the Machiavellian notion of associations. The 1990s the higher concept communities mayami marakta lainariba mari du masak tanaba masak tu tanaba honabada by seasonary 1990s the masi maroina Machiavelli magi philosopher Machiavelli has a magi notion of associations masidagi bagi law motopani adana masigi Machiavellian concept social capital Italian political scientist Robert Putnamna magi making democracy works civic traditions in modern Italy so mara masi seasonai loina na India context Asutos Versnina magi ethnic conflict and civic life Hindus and Muslims in India the masagi social capital masigi concept sida samana Machiavellian sida seasonai convergence of a process ki mafamda sai mamang hai yu maina liberal approach nataba Marxian approach to study Indian politics sai masi naina propaganda hana khelana lermase hogi punsalak tasalak convergence malaba aduguni. According to Pranab Bardhan, a neo-Marxist scholar, Indian state is an autonomous actor which plays an important role in shaping and molding power relations among classes. Pranab Bardhan haiba neo-Marxist scholars ina manai Indian state as autonomous actor mane maromdom maning tamna leizaba adumba actor mani magi mana maruina sanariba roles na kaino harakanda in shaping and molding power relations among classes. Different social classes in the Marakta, Masagi, Lainariba power relations. Akanba, Aswanba, Apikba, Soba, Sumba, Marin Akanba, Swanbagi, Sigi, social class, Savitareva, Sigi Marakaleba, Sakti, Sakti Munavagi, Hidana, Sigi, and Wasi, Masigi, shaping and molding Tawada. Sembo Semjan Magi, Sawum, Satamdo, Sims Havada. So overall among Indian states and lower. Lewis and Susan Rudolph are of the view that the Indian state is a centrist state and it is devoid of class politics. Mabani na mu hiring as autonomous actor hiring can also Panabaran hire Matunda Lewis and Susan Rudolph as Indian states as a centrist state of motion as I gave that class politics you can welcome say. Senande the class characters can yaude must stay ladybug and was the social inequalities hierarchy you can was the masagi balance some of the labor amadazu yamna lefties or rightists with the one centrist with state salon mother lay had minor instead the Indian state functions as a third actor between capital and labor and the Indian state saying as labor and capital ani third actor the Indian state functions between demand polity and command polity. State magi demand polity and command polity have magi salon and either Mazda say any maxigi character maze operator Indian states. Marina, the state has to deal with pressure relating to various demand groups such as students, women, and farmers. As I longi singna, Natraga, Nupi singi weba, Natraga Mahero singi weba, Mogi loop singi, organizing singi, one demand mans, Masidagi lava pressure either, states lava pressures in the Masi Dildonava. Say states laeva, then a magi, Sina magi demand polity to be stating my demand politics is one of the minor layer. In post-independent India, study of Indian politics has had two major approaches, namely non-Marxist and Marxist. And Mamana Suhaigre was independent India, the Indian politician Nainabada, Marxist and non-Marxist approach. The two approaches have traditionally been exclusive to each other. Ani say Ahmadadi, Amagamaga say Tokai Tokai exclusive winner. However, there came a sense in this nature since 1980s as the rigidity between the two approaches got diluted to some extent. Adu Hana Tokai Tokai Marxian Marxist ki approach non-Marxist ki approach hai le 1980s dagidi masigi tokhaina bagi khena baje khara handarakhre. A convergence emerged in the 1980s. They started using terms such as state political system or state interchangeably and address similar issues. Adana ngasai Marxist approach ne non-Marxist approach ne haiba pose 1980s dagidi ngasai convergence lakhre adu matunda state political system or state everything ngasai interchangeably onthon sin yana seasonare hamadi political system haibasina liberal approach habidi non-Marxist approach political system haibasina aduga Marxist approach na state haibasida stick tawnaramane adu konangadi convergence 1980s lakana di interchangeably seasonaba hore aduga one man topa manaba issuing the supuna address both Marxist and non-Marxist approach. It is visible in the writings of Francine Frankl, Leo Rudolph, and Susan Rudolph, and Pranab Bardhan. Namoigi writings in the convergence Francine Frankl looks at the historical contradictions between the transformative goals of development planning and the conservative forces of institutional democratic politics. She makes a distinction between political and social issues. Frankl na transformative goals of development planning ko sakhat thorangi magi bagi pandam singai tare ko masiga institutional democratic politics ki magi conservative forces amana transformative way bani ahongba warak pai tare ko amana conservative way ba masagi ahongba pam da bagi ko bagi hana gi amu admaina lining bagi ko magi institutional democratic politics uneasy historical contradiction Madhugi Munava Kenava either Madhu Masaki Nainavane Frankl Natorisina Aduga Mana Masaki political and social issues I was uneasy and distinct winner and the minor Kaido Yang. Was it summary the Lakanda liberal approach Karino Kamaita Unwapsina Sarapana Kandaban using the way others later. The state politics in India has been broadly studied into frameworks, Marxist and non-Marxist. Mamang slide the minor. Indian state politics masi Kanganaba Nainarapa Tamupakanda, framework and season Maruina, Marxist framework, Aduga non-Marxist framework. Non-Marxist Maruina season is liberal institutional approach. Adana liberal approach na karo matam da dominant way na season na rami haiba ka 1950s 60s ning tamo matum post independent India ko Congress na dominant political party way na saigi flourish story ngai masigi matam ko Congress system na nazni ko thai na sai thai ba dum ba sigi Paris masidana liberal approach na dominant way na yam. Its primary focus was to study how institutions maintain themselves by maintaining consensus among their constituent units. Adana masida liberal approach da mana piba primary focus ina kaino hai kanda political system dugi manung di yauriba institutions mayam sina maikoi gi maragi constituent units singse masigi mungna ba sai interaction to ba dagi mungna ba ko aduga ngasai gi consensus for ba masigi pose amai toroga sustain toroga maintain to we have the maruiba magi miyeng se thameba. It preferred to use political system rather than the state to designate a polity. Adana sida sagi non-Marxist ki framework da political system have this season nani maruina state have season nani decision ko polity no masakta no na. It was also known as systemic modernization or development framework. It ran as an alternative to the Marxist approach. Then a liberal approach, systemic approach, modernization or development framework hai ga sukhanai masina Marxist approach siragi tonganba ko atopa bai approach amai dare tonganba atopa miyeng moina da maina flourish however. From the 1980s, the liberal approach had undergone changes. It has become flexible in using certain concepts such as state or political economy. Aduna 1980s onwards, the convergence liberal approach ka Marxist approach ka anis data so sanaba malak aduna concepts kai kra myam je season of kan the hen flexibility lakre. Its scope has expanded to include study of civil society, social capital, and multiculturalism. Aduga ngasai gi magi nainabagi magi pankhaiji sizu khagi pathuk sauthura kanda civil society, social capital, multiculturalism yam sida loina mana magi pankhai mangjil sale. The broad concern of the liberal approach has been to address issues concerning democracy. Adana liberal approach na mana maruina mana mieng thami ba kaino se issues ka ino ga dinga sai democracy kogi nyam lenga seba sigi sana kanon sini haina na samaya lei. Okay ngasi yo na sida loisalas.